Imagine this. One of the most terrifying Xenos horrors with the ability to devour entire worlds. The Tyranids. And one of the most well-respected chapters of Space Marines. The Blood Angels. What happens when you put these two armies in a head-to-head, all-out war on the Blood Angels' home planet of Baal? Today, we'll be talking about the Devastation of Baal, a catastrophic event that tested the limits of the Blood Angels and their very existence as a chapter. This tale is packed with bravery, tragedy, and the relentless struggle against one of the galaxy's most terrifying foes. But first, let me know in the comments what other events or characters that you'd like me to cover in the future. Let's get into it. So, what was the core challenge that the Blood Angels faced during this event? Well, they were up against Tyranid Hive Fleet Leviathan. This wasn't just any ordinary Xenos invasion. Leviathan is an immense, relentless swarm that sought to consume everything in its path. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Not only did the Tyranids aim to devour the planet and everything on it, the Tyranids sought to erase the Blood Angels as a chapter entirely. So, imagine this, a force so overwhelming and monstrous that it threatened the very existence of an entire chapter of Space Marines. So, the Blood Angels knew they had to muster every ounce of strength to face this existential threat. Now, let's dive deeper into the events that led up to the invasion. Before the Tyranids arrived, the Blood Angels had been harassing the Tyranids on their approach, and dealing with their own internal struggles, including the Black Rage and Red Thirst. However, when Leviathan made its approach, they realized that their chapter alone would not be enough to save their homeworld. Therefore, a call went out to all successor chapters of the Blood Angels to come defend their home. And I'm going to be reading out of the book here, because the book by Guy Haley can tell this story, obviously, way better than I can summarize it. So I will be taking some liberties and reading from the book just to show how insane this whole event was. The hive mind looked out of its innumerable eyes towards the dull red star of Baal. It apprehended that this was the hive of warriors that hurt it so grievously, who had burned its feeding grounds and scattered its fleets. It hated the red prey, and it coveted them. Tasting their exotic genomes, it had seen potential for new and terrible war beasts. And so, it drew its plans, and it set in motion its trillion bodies towards the consumption of the creatures in red metal, so that their secrets might be plundered and re-employed in the sating of the hive mind's endless hunger. This was deliberate, considered, and done in malice. The hive mind was aware, and it desired vengeance. So, that's terrifying. And also, another excerpt from the book talking about the amount of Space Marines that are starting to show up on the surface of Baal. There are over 15,000 Sons of Sanguinius in system already, said Dante. Estimates suggest we may eventually be blessed with as many as 25,000. Every warrior that comes here is another stone in our defenses against Leviathan. I wonder if this is what our father saw when he marshaled his legion here, those millennia ago. I feel close to him, seeing this. The dark we face is great, but it is a fine thing to come closer to the Primarch. Councils were held and plans were made to address the coming threat. For example, at the meeting of the Great Red Council, all summoned chapter masters swore to follow Commander Dante's orders. Even though they thought that was obvious, Commander Dante wanted to hear from their mouths that they would follow his orders, and he didn't want to assume anything in his command. So that's awesome. The battles that ensued were nothing short of epic. We saw the Blood Angels facing wave after wave of Tyranids, both on the ground and in the void, showcasing their strategic brilliance and fighting prowess. They even used the humans that were on Baal to help with the defense of the Arx Angelicum, which is their fortress monastery, which was essentially what they were holding on Baal. Everything else on Baal is an irradiated wasteland of desert, red sands, nothing around. But they needed everything that they could muster to save essentially their operating base. So they, one thing that is kind of neat is that right in the beginning of the battle, they, let's say, did the standard face-off when the armies of the defense and the attackers are looking at each other, waiting for somebody to make the first move. But one thing that the Blood Angels laid a trap for the Tyranids, and they used something called false water, I think. I will have to double check that. But essentially it's an organism that looks like water, but it saps all of the moisture out of creatures and kills them. So the Blood Angels made a moat of this creature, essentially, around the whole Arx Angelicum, and there was one Tyranid that came to inspect, and the Blood Angels shot it because they didn't want to reveal that it was a false, moat or what have you. So they shot it, and then that started the whole assault on the Arx Angelicum, which led to millions and millions of Tyranid creatures being killed just by this moat. But then, once the moat had filled with Tyranid creatures, the other Tyranids used the bodies of the piled up dead Tyranids to cross the moat to actually begin the attack. And there was still plenty of Tyranids to go around after millions of them had died in this. So, that is the terrifying stakes that we're talking about here in this battle. Iconic characters like Commander Dante and Mephiston played pivotal roles during these battles, making sacrifices that would become legend. And as if the Tyranid invasion wasn't bad enough, even Mephiston even thwarted a demonic invasion from the Blood Angels' ancient enemy, the greater demon of Khorne, Kabanda, who said in his own words, who was determined that only he and he alone would be afforded the pleasure of bringing the sons of Sanguinius to their final ruin. This is the same demon that fought Sanguinius back in the Horus Heresy days, and he's basically made a portal on Baal, one of the planets of Baal, because he said, the Tyranids aren't going to do this, I'm going to be the one to do this. So Mephiston, who is the chief librarian for the Librarius sector of the Blood Angels, one of the most powerful psychers in the galaxy, convened a lot of the Librarius of all of these chapters that have showed up to stop this demonic invasion, which they couldn't really do, but they essentially the demons were able to come through, but they just destroyed a bunch of Tyranids on that other planet, so that's cool, I guess. I don't know. So, every decision made by the Blood Angels was critical, of course. One wrong move could spell disaster. They fought not just for their home, but for their very identity. So, it's not like there was going to be any Blood Angels left. If the Tyranids won, they would devour everything, and they had called all their successor chapters, so there would be no way, essentially, to come back from this. The sheer tenacity displayed in the face of overwhelming odds is what made this part of their history so unforgettable. So, like, take this, for example. This is a line from Gabriel Seth of the Flesh Terrors, which you may or may not know. It's a successor chapter that is more prone to the red thirst, or like more susceptible to fall under the effects of the red thirst and the black rage. So their numbers always stay kind of small, and they're really brutal to work with. Like anyway. So Gabriel Seth is the chapter master of the Flesh Terrors. The Flesh Terrors fought with savagery at last unfettered. Here was a foe whose total destruction was desired. There were no civilians to fear for on this battlefield. Freedom came in violence. It was a release. For nigh on 2 centuries, Seth had exhorted his warriors to restrain themselves, curbing their worst excesses, directing what bloodlust he could not stop to the appropriate ends. For his troubles he had been censured, tried by his peers, betrayed by his warriors, hunted by the Inquisition. None of that mattered now. None of it at all. He slew, and he slew again, and as the enemy died, and Seth roared and raged at them for having the temerity to exist, a slow, cold smile crept over his face. Not even at Kryptus had he been able to enjoy such abandon. Here was vindication at last. On Baal Primus, the Flesh Terrors had a battlefield where they could do no wrong. Ugh. When we reach the climax of the narrative, it brings us to the actual siege and one of the final battles on Baal. This was the moment where everything hung in the balance. The Blood Angels had to make a heroic stand, a true test of their resolve and courage. Picture this. The skies darkened with the wings of Tyranid bioships, the ground shaking beneath the weight of countless foes. It was chaos, but amidst the chaos, the Blood Angels rallied together. Showcasing their valor, brotherhood, they fought tooth and nail, knowing that their very existence depended on their success. 50 yards away was the largest hive tyrant Dante had ever seen. Upon backward hinged legs, it stood taller than a dreadnought. Red spore clouds pumped from the chimneys on its high back. Bonded to its fists were 4 matched bone swords, with heavy ends as square and brutal as cleavers. He had heard of this thing, the galaxy's bane, the hive mind personified. Commander Dante faced the Swarm Lord. So this is insane. So Commander Dante is the big golden man here. I'll probably put a picture up or something like that. But he 1v1'd a Swarm Lord, which I'll put a picture up here, is insane. This thing has 4 arms, it's massive, and it's essentially, like the book says, the hive mind personified. It has increased intelligence, strength, and cunning, and can make plans and do things like that. So this is insane, and it didn't go super great. So, Dante almost died. Like, Dante was dead. But even in death, duty doesn't end for Dante. He's a whole nother character we're going to have to do a video on to understand what's going on with him. But he is one of the oldest living Space Marines. He kind of just wants to die at this point. Everything hurts. His hair is turning white. He can't die because he's a Space Marine. They're functionally immortal, but they do age. So he's not feeling too great. But still, he runs into this battle and is on the very brink of death. But the spirit of Sanguinius himself comes to Dante in his near-death state and meets with him in his mind and says, there is still more you have to do. And Dante even begs for death from him. But he said, there is still more that you have to do. And so Dante goes back to the world of the living. He's shaken awake by one of his apothecarian. And then what does he find when he gets out of his near-death stupor? He finds some bigger Space Marines that he doesn't recognize. Says, who are you people? And they'll say, hold on, let us take you to our Lord. And then he is brought before the returned Primarch of the Ultramarines, Rabute Gilliman, and who has brought with him these Primaris Marines, which he authorized the creation of with Belisarius Call which is a tech marine, basically. There's a lot more to him, too. I'm not going to get into that. But he tries to kneel before the returned Primarch, Rabute Gilliman. He tries to kneel before him and say, "I'm sorry for not doing enough here. Like, we were so close to losing." And Gilliman is just like, "What are you talking about? You basically destroyed this on your own. They were easily killed once we showed up." And Dante said, "No, I'm so sorry. We almost lost." It's like, but you didn't, you know what I mean? So, but Rabute Gilliman gives Dante a ton of Primaris Marines, essentially, that were created from the gene seed of Sanguinius. And so it bolsters the ranks of the Blood Angels that were absolutely decimated. Like, there was whole chapters just gone. Like, successor chapters, they're just gone. Totally devoured. Will not come back. Nothing. And then Gilliman just shows up and gives him more Marines. Like, "Hey, here you go. Here's some bigger Marines that we created for you." It's like, "Oh, thanks." And also, he asks Dante, he tells him that he is one of the only men in the Imperium that he will demand that he talks to him as an equal, because he respects Dante so much. And he gives Dante command of the Imperium Nihilus, which is another thing I'm going to have to delve into. Essentially, Chaos launched a Black Crusade that destroyed the world of Cadia. And if you're watching this video, you may know what that is, and you may not, but that created a rift called the Cicatrix Maledictum, I think is how you say that. But it essentially tore the galaxy in two. So the Imperium Nihilus is up where Baal is, and that's a whole section of galaxy. And below it is where Terra is, and it's, they're separated. It's really hard to get communication or travel through it. But they were able to for this, of course. And Gilliman gives Dante the command of the entire Imperium Nihilus. So now, once again, he can't die, because he's got a mission that he has to accomplish. So, at the end of this book, there is a shattered chapters of the Blood Angels are being bolstered by Primaris Marines that were given by Rabute Gilliman. Mephiston was recovered from his whole little foray with the demonic incursion, and Gabriel Seth from the Flesh Terrace is not too hot on these Primaris Marines, but that will be explored in the next book. In summary, the Devastation of Baal not only shaped the future of the Blood Angels, but it also left a lasting impact on the Warhammer 40k universe. It was one of the first times that Primaris Marines were seen by other chapters, not of the Ultramarines. So that is a big thing. And also the command given to him by Gilliman of the Imperium Nihilus, which is that cutoff section like I mentioned earlier. So the resilience that they displayed during such a dark period not only solidified their place in the lore for me, that this story is the one that got me to be a massive fan of the Blood Angels, just because the way it's written is just so good, sounds so epic. There is a little bit more of a deep dive that I can go into in a separate, shorter video about some human characters that are shown during the book, which I think are kind of neat. Full circle kind of thing. I'm excited for that one too. But it's a powerful reminder of what it takes to stand against what looks like a never-ending tide, and to see the end of it. To fight for what you believe in, and to protect your own against insurmountable odds. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the lore of Warhammer 40k, which I want to do more of because it is my hyperfixation for the past couple years, is just absorbing Warhammer lore. So I just want to project out what I'm just feeling about these events and how just things I think are cool. about Warhammer. If you want to see more of it, go ahead and just check out my playlist where we're currently playing through Warhammer 40k Space Marine in preparation for Space Marine 2 to come out, which I'm super excited about because it looks really good. And let us know your thoughts in the comments. What is your favorite part of the Devastation of Baal? What's your favorite thing in Warhammer? Anything. I'd love to hear from you. Take care.